Gail Gove. I'm the General Counsel of NBCU News Group, and today at NBCU Academy, I'm going to be talking about how to submit a FOIA request. So what is it? What is a FOIA request? So first, FOIA is the Freedom of Information Act. It's a federal statute that allows you to seek records from federal executive agencies. So who can file a FOIA? Anyone, for any purpose. Who can you FOIA? So federal executive branch agencies and departments. So the IRS, the SEC, the EEOC. If you really want to have fun, the Office of Management and the Budget. But you can't FOIA the president and his or her advisors, Congress, courts, or private companies. What can you FOIA? All records in whatever form. So this would include sort of hard copies, your traditional records, electronic records, audiovisual recordings, photographs, and so on. Electronic records is really broad, so that would include computer files, metadata, databases, and the like. If you're asking for electronic records, be sure to say expressly if you want metadata, because you won't automatically get it unless you make that clear. The key thing for you to remember is you can ask for records, not information. And there's no obligation on the part of any federal or state agencies to create those records for you. So if there are no records about the subject that you're inquiring about, they don't have to give you anything, right? They don't have to go create that record. So this sounds pretty great, right? It's a statute that says you ask us for information and we, the government, will give it to you. Sounds great on paper. Is this the reporting tool of your dreams? Well, maybe, and maybe not. So the statutes usually say, and FOIA says, that agencies have to respond to you within 20 days. But in reality, it can actually take months or even years to get a response. And when you do get a response, it may be riddled with redactions. There'll be sort of blacked out portions of the records or the entire records blacked out completely. And the reason for that is that there are maybe a dozen or so exemptions to these FOIA laws. And these are records that they can withhold, for example, records that are confidential under federal laws, like other federal laws, like tax returns. Records that include trade secrets or privileged commercial financial information, or law enforcement records. So with all that background, here's some tips. Before you file, first check out the agency's website and see if what you're asking for is subject to automatic disclosure. If they get the same kind of request all the time, they're supposed to actually put that information out there for you before you even ask. You should also look at the agency's website to understand its own FOIA rules of the road. Every agency does this differently. So they'll have their own rules for where you're supposed to submit it and how, timing, the fees that can be involved, and who their chief FOIA officer is. And you'll want to know all that before you actually get started. Having done that little bit of research, the next thing I recommend that you do is contact the agency. What you're really looking for here is a source. You want someone in the agency to tell you what they actually have and as much information as possible about what you're looking for so that you can craft the best possible FOIA request. If things really go your way, your source at the agency, you won't even need to file the FOIA request because that source will just give you the information before you have to even bother with drafting and submitting a FOIA. At the end of the day, at a minimum, what you're trying to figure out is what do you actually have and how should I ask for this information or how should I ask for these records? So now you're to the point where you're going to draft your request. The number one thing to keep in mind here is you want to write a request that is so simple and easy to understand and straightforward that someone can easily identify the records that you're looking for, go get you those records and send them to you. That's your goal at the end of the day. So how do you get there? First, clearly describe the records that you're asking for. If you can, give the date of the record sought or at least a time frame. If you know the correspondence of the records or who's going to have them, the record custodians, give the names of those individuals. If you're asking for a report, if you know the name of the report, that's even better. Put it in there. The more specificity that you can add, the better off you are. The next thing you're going to want to address are search fees and duplication fees. So at the outset, I will say that they can actually charge you some of these fees, but you need to include some magic language under the statute to try and minimize those fees as much as possible. So you upfront, you want to say that you're a journalist and therefore they shouldn't be charging you search fees at all. When it comes to duplication fees, these only apply if you're actually asking for hard copies of records. They shouldn't charge you for anything for the first 100 pages, but you'll want to ask for a waiver for any fees associated with pages beyond 100. And the magic language in the statute is that you need to tell them that you're a journalist, that the information is in the public interest, and that it will significantly contribute to the public's understanding of government operations. It's also helpful to ask the agency to contact you if your duplication fees are going to exceed a certain amount. So you don't want to be surprised if you get a bill for, say, $3,000. You would want them to give you the heads up. Or you can ask them to contact you to tell you what they estimate those fees are. Now, under the statute, you're entitled to a response, theoretically, within 20 days. If you get it within 20 days, congratulations, that is a huge feat. But let's say you want it even faster than 20 days. Again, there are specific words that you need to use in your letter that are set forth in the statute. So first of all, you need to say that you're a member of the news media, that this is not for commercial use, that you have an urgent need for it, and then you need to certify under penalty of perjury that those statements are all true and accurate. In your conclusion to the letter, you should say that you want all non-exempt records that are responsive to your request. Ask them to contact you with any questions and give them your name, your email address, and your telephone number as well, and note that you will follow up in a few days. Here's the key. Keep your final request as you've been submitted to the agency. Please be sure you keep a copy. 9 times out of 10, you're going to be doing this electronically. Most agencies want these submitted online as opposed to you putting it in a mailbox. But whatever you do, keep a copy of it. And in a few days, you should receive back from the agency a tracking number that will allow you to look up how you're doing online. But pretty quickly, you're going to want to start calling the agency and emailing the agency and try to find a person who will engage with you on how's it going, filling this request, what do you have, when are you going to get back to me? And you'll want to keep a log of every single time you have a conversation with the agency, anyone at the agency, or that you even reach out to the agency to try to get a response. So you might find you're emailing the agency fairly regularly saying, it's been 19 days, it's been 22 days, and you want to track all of that in a log. So note that if they ask you for clarification, they come back to you and they say, we don't understand what you're looking for, you're going to want to respond pretty quickly because their 20-day period for response, that time tolls while any questions to you are pending. So what happens if you get no response at all, you get a denial, or what you get is so riddled with redactions that it's fairly meaningless, and they're claiming that all these exemptions under the statute apply and you don't agree. You think those exemptions are either inapplicable or otherwise unwarranted under the statute. So you have 20 days to appeal to the agency. And the key is that you'll need to include your original correspondence, the original FOIA, and it will also be very helpful to you to have that log of all of your conversations with the agency up until that point. If you lose your appeal, you can try to call the agency's FOIA officer or the Office of Government Information Services, but more likely than not, your only recourse is going to be to file a lawsuit in federal court if this is a FOIA, or in state court if it's one of the state public information laws. How does this work outside the United States? Largely the same way. Most countries have laws that are analogous to FOIA that you can use when you're looking for information. And how can you learn more? FOIA.gov is a good resource, and also the Department of Justice has a FOIA guide that's online. The Reporters Committee for the Freedom of the Press has a guide and even a FOIA letter generator that I've pointed people to in the past that's also really helpful. Thanks for joining us. I'm Gail Gove for NBCU Academy. Thanks so much.